morning and welcome to another edition of Roadhouse Live. We are live. Today is October 3rd, October the 3rd, 2023. Well, Bender, so I was sitting here pondering, as I ponder from time to time, certain questions of life. And then I was like, okay, I have an hour and a half before the rerun of Billions comes on. What am I going to do? So I turn on Netflix, and Netflix has this show called Encounters. Have you seen this?
Maybe. You remember I was talking about some UFO shit. Is that UFO shit?
That's UFO shit.
Yeah.
UFO shit.
Yeah, I think I've seen that one.
And I was sitting here watching this going, it's like, yeah, I don't have an answer for any of this. It's like it had to have been probably the worst thing I could have fixed my eyes to last night. like literally the worst thing that I could have watched last night was that. And I'll just leave it there because it's like, what? Why? He's sending helicopters harass this man's cow because he saw something? It's like, come on, man. Just come on. All right. Speaking of harassing, a lot of harassing continuing to go on. We had Fed speakers yesterday. Fed speaker again this morning, Bostic, piped off, wanting to remind us that higher for longer, it's just going to be a thing because, we feel like it. I don't know.
It doesn't hurt enough yet.
Exactly. It's like you are not, broke. So no. Yes, we will continue trying to make you broke until you broke. And, all the articles this morning are about the 10-year, they're about bonds, they're about yields, they're about when will this happen? When will this happen? When will that happen? When all these publications are saying when and if and will, that starts to get a little bit goofy. Because you don't know whether or not to fade these types of articles. Because in the past, you can fade them and do okay. Because a lot of the articles and a lot of things being put out there, they're used to stimulate the opposite impact. Kind of like when they come out before Apple AR and put a 230 price target on it while they're selling their shares out from underneath everybody. Like kind of like that. Or NVIDIA 800 price target and once again selling the shares out from underneath everybody. As they're saying, 800. So yeah, it's like we're limited in actual real news and real data. The data that continues to come out is everything is pointing in the right direction as far as what needs to be accomplished, but the market is not taking it that way, mainly based on the strength of the dollar in the 10-year. That's really where we're at with the whole thing. So dollar 10-year continues to be, the epic thorn in the side. Their ability to move Apple like it's a speedboat when it's really an aircraft carrier continues to be one of the more odd things that you see on a daily and weekly basis. So coming into the day, basically we've come down and we're playing around, and really, even after that big pop yesterday, we're playing back in that same zone we played yesterday, Bender. The one where I don't think you like very much. You're not a big fan.
Well, it's just the action.
Yeah.
Right. Like I don't want to mess with that when it's just. I said it yesterday. I'll say it again. Like I need more. I need to see more price action. I need to see. I'm kind of waiting for that hat tip.
See, the thing is it's giving plenty of range within the chop, right?
Yeah, but I don't.
And I'm saying for you, look, you trade how you trade when you want to trade, all that there, right? It's like that's a personal choice. You're kind of like my body, my choice, my bank account, my choice. Same thing. It's important that you respect these things. These are quite personal. So it's more from the standpoint of we continue to have episodes and days to where we're repeating previous day action. And they have a setup for, pretty much the same thing again. Yesterday, you called out seek and destroy, and boy, did they seek, and boy, did they destroy.
Sure did.
It's like yesterday was one of those textbook days that we knew going into it what was a possibility, but the manner in which they chose to seek and destroy was like, oh man, why? Why you got to do it like that? So, from a news standpoint, the only real couple of things that are glaring from an equity standpoint is China still sucks. If you had any question about China sucking, it should be answered. China sucks. If you sleep with Chinese equities overnight, odds are you're going to end up with herpes. That continues to be a thing. The other piece of it is I think there was an article out as far as Meta, basically because of the regulatory issues with targeted ads. They are threatening to say, that's fine. We'll get rid of the targeted ads, but we're going to start charging people to use a face page, which, if you're kind of taking Elon's model over there a little bit and kind of using it to, as far as, what is the future of social media, that's a pretty interesting threat to lay out. Pretty interesting little deal to lay out. So Meta had some flow into the 305s, 310s, and 315s yesterday. They were smacking, but it's very difficult for any of these tickers to catch a bid if the dollar just wants to go on a straight death march to the upside. And once again, coming into the morning, what are we going to do here? Are we going to double top? Are we going to go till ups till forever? It's tough stuff. So Bender, walk us through exactly what we did yesterday. The way the chart is looking,
right.
and tell us what story we have as far as these charts, where we are. And
well, when you have money in your wallet and you see the dollar going up, are you like, how do I take advantage of this? And no. I don't know what that. Do you feel like you get more tacos at Taco Bell when the dollars?
Maybe if I decide to take a quick vacation to Uganda, if I'm like, go. you know what, this is, man, I'm gonna go spend 6 months in Uganda, based off of this dollar pop. It's like, rock and roll. But I prefer not to eat dog. There's just certain comforts that I'm used to. Especially from a culinary standpoint, that I'm just not going to be into all that there. So maybe for somebody else. Yeah. Sonny, you're a world traveler. You into Uganda?
No, but it's on the list.
It's on the list. See, it's on the next there you go. Well, strong as the dollar is, it's like, Jesus, you can buy half the country right now.
You can do it pretty cheap. I was looking at...
I've been buying yen and over fast.
I was looking at like some areas in Japan where I'm like, I was looking at, what you'd pay currently. I'm like, man, you could do a pretty crazy, trip for.
Oh yeah,
Japan
is fun.
A lot of money right now. It's crazy.
And you can rent people in Japan.
Yes.
Well, did you see that? Yes. How you can rent people in Japan and China, and they're government sanctioned people, just like, it's like you come to like New York and you like rent a bike. You can rent a person. Yeah, I'm not joking.
They're called tour guides.
You can rent a person.
They're called tour guides. I like that.
You can. It's a thing.
Okay. All right. Let's take a look at this. Looking at an ES 2-hour chart right now. I'm going to zoom out real quick. Let's look. Here's an 8-hour. You see I got this line down here. I don't know necessarily that we go all the way down there, but definitely something that I'm going to keep an eye on. That 41.54.75. You can see kind of all this action right in here. You imagine there's a lot of pain to be had, to be caused, right? If they want to take it down here and take all these people out. I think if they were to do that, that would start to feel like shit, we're screwed, right? So for that reason, I'm going to keep that on my chart and just kind of keep it in view. Going back to, let's go to a 60-minute here. And we're still hovering right around that longer term trend line. We're just below it here. Hells, you mentioned, well, kind of the same place we've been for the last few days, and yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
It's the old rock and roll song. It's the same old, same old.
Was that Kiss?
Was it Kiss or like Motley Crue or Poison or?
Might have been. Oh yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Could have one of those bands. All right. This 15-minute fair value gap right here that we kind of dip down into, we're still in it. If this gives out, we talked about this yesterday, the bottom of this gives out that 42.89 area. Keep an eye on this level as a target, 42.7725. And if it breaks that, that's kind of where I would be looking for, that potential shift. Now, if it doesn't break that, it continues to hold, and we can start to push back up, then, maybe it gets a retest of that longer term trend line, which would come in kind of right around just above 4,300, 4307, depending on what time of the day it comes in, 4307, 4308, somewhere in there is where you'd hit that trend line. You can see I've marked out the Asia session right here and the London session high, which was above the Asia session. As we push back up, you can see these 15-minute fair value gaps left behind. If it is headed this direction, this is something I kind of wanted to point out because we were talking about price action at the beginning of the show. And if I scroll back to, let's go back to yesterday's price action. And you can see this fair value gap that was sitting back here. That was from 5:45 in the morning, right? And you can see one right here, 7:40 a.m. And when you get this kind of price action where this isn't straight line type move, right? This was that seek and destroy, take stops, go down, take stops, go up, take stops. And when you get this sort of price action into a fair value gap, that doesn't tell me that it's going to get through there with force and then, and it has a desire to gravitate towards the stops up here or higher, right? That is, it's moving out of, obligation almost, versus having that just, yep, this is where it's going. I like those when the moves start and you get that, yep, this is where it's going, taps a fair value gap and then gets a pullback and then makes that next move higher. That tells me now I have targets at these where the stops are sitting, right? And it's like, okay, it's got the momentum to push to those targets. So you don't necessarily have to talk about this a lot. You don't necessarily have to try to catch the bottom, call the bottom, catch knives, things like that, because when it starts moving that way, you don't have to try to anticipate it. You start seeing that move and it's like, okay, this is the game plan. And when it's not like that, it becomes difficult trading, treacherous, right? Because it starts heading up into this, you get a little pullback and you're like, okay, I'm in for the move up here, right? But that's not what's going on here. It's just trash. So, I try to avoid that as much as possible. This kind of move this morning, no pullbacks, right? This is the 5 minute. You got this one little pause and then boom, right? And then it gets a little bounce. When you get that kind of a move, especially during market hours, that's the sort of move that tells me that, okay, I can find a bounce to get in because, it's likely to see some continuation to a level of liquidity or stops, which is what it did here, right? Came down and took out all these stops right in here. This was too clean of a bottom, looked too much like a double bottom or quote support for it not to get taken when this is the type of momentum and trajectory, like it's going for that, right? So now that it's done that and it's taken that out,
So
again,
so it's not necessarily where we're going; it's how we're getting there. Is really
it's how we're getting there. That's a big part of whether or not I decide to partake or not. Absolutely. So, now that it came down and it got this level, now I'm watching, okay, what does it want to do with it now that it's taken that out? Is there more work to be done below? Or was that the objective, was to come in and fill this fair value gap? Or do we want to continue? Do we have more stops, more work? Does it want to come down here to this 77.25? And the way that I avoid guessing on that, and it doesn't always work, but I look for those market structure shifts, and I do my best to avoid it until I see that. And I'm becoming more and more disciplined about that, because it saves me a lot of grief and frustration trying to call that or get in before it's actually switched direction, right? So on a day like today, now that it's come and take that, I look for, okay, what's the next? If it wants to take stops, first set of stops above, kind of right here, this is where I would look to see if it creates that market structure shift. Does it come up here and just poke through it and then pull back down, get a bounce, pull back down? That would tell me that probably not going to get it right now, and we can probably look lower. So now we have this little double bottom, relative equal lows right there. Right now, if it gets those power candles through here, then I look for a retest. Power candle, pull back, retest. And that's kind of the difference between poke through, pull back versus get through it, put a candle or two or three above, and then come back and retest. So that's kind of what I'm looking for to find that when that shift happens. I want to see 2 or 3 good candles to get through it and then come back for the retest, not just poke its head through and pull back below. That's kind of what I'll be looking for. To be honest, as it's trading, unless we, if we go make this run higher and then get a market structure shift the other way, if there's enough room, I'll take a short trying to target these relative equal lows. If there's not enough room in here, and that's kind of when I tend to avoid it. Like yesterday, there was I could look at some of these levels and go, okay, I could kind of map something out that takes these stops or takes this out down here. But it, like for 3 or 4 points, I just don't mess with it. Like the risk reward, it's just not into it. It's not worth it. So if I get that setup, I'll call it out if I see it. But going back to the 2 hour real quick. This is the last thing. Yeah. So this up here, this 43.71, when you kind of zoom out and we kind of talk about over the last week, we've talked about looking for that market structure shift on a little bit longer time frame. Start with a 2 hour, maybe a 4 hour. from this area right now, if this area holds, this in here could create that, meaning we'd have to get above it, come back and retest, and then that would show me that we have a potential shift in direction, change in market structure, that we can now start looking at all of these levels above, because eventually it's going to go up and take all this stuff out, right? Left all these stops up here, and at some point we're going to go take them. Don't know when. Don't know when the bottom is in on this move, but we'll find it. We'll keep our eyes open. We'll figure it out. And like I've been saying, I think for this move, I think we can be patient. You might look at this and go, yeah, but that's 70 points that I'm going to miss out on. Who gives a shit? Because when we get this move and we get it right, you're going to have, 200 more to the upside. Likely. So that's what I'm waiting on. That's kind of what I'm looking for. Now, this is the current level, right? If we do make a move down here, this level may come down as well. If the setup, if we get this kind of where we take out some stops to the upside, buying pressure, right? And then they come down, they make another low, they kind of do that again. The market structure shift, like where I'll be looking for that, will likely move down as well. But for now, that's where it's at. So, we can find some moves on some shorter time frames and play those, 15-minute setups, 10-minute setups that Stonkington calls out. But bigger picture, at current levels, until we're up above this, it's like the pain may not be over. Once it gets above 43.70 or so, then we can kind of see if it's going to hold these levels and how it's moving to that, right? And that will hopefully give us that hat tip. Going to show their cards that, okay, now this thing is switching direction. And that, I think, is about it. I think that maps it out, kind of where we're at. I guess last thing I'll say is when you do get candles down like this, you get that momentum move down and it's not choppy, right? If it's choppy on the way down, more often than not, it's going to be choppy on the way up. If it's one-sided on the way down, when it does decide to move up, more often than not, it's going to be one-sided. It can move through this very quickly if it decides to reverse and move up.
Thank you, Bender. I appreciate that. Sonny, what you got, man?
Morning, everyone. Make this quick. So you'd already talked about Meta is going to start subscription fee in Europe. I think this is going to be a trend across the board for social media platforms because TikTok announced the same thing yesterday. If you want ad-free, they're testing, you have to pay $5 a month for it. Macy's is looking to open about 30 smaller stores, and they're trending towards just limited labels brands instead of everything that they sell from stock to the kitchen. Chipotle has been testing robot that makes or assembles burrito bowls and salads for digital orders. They're done with their testing, so this would be
Wait a second.
Yeah.
You're telling me I can tell a robot to toss my salad?
Yes, you
You're
can.
telling me
This
that
is
we're
what
here.
he's been waiting for since
It's
Elon
finally-
mentioned the robot. All he's talked about is the sex
happened.
robot.
It's finally happening.
And it was from Chipotle.
Dude, you can see his smile even though you can't see him. I mean, like the big ass grin on his face right now, getting his
Thank
salad
you.
tossed.
Man, guys, this is progress.
This is indeed progress, which means less jobs.
All right.
But
All right. Please continue, Sonny.
yes, so this was an interesting news. So Delta Airlines is the latest airline to say they have found fake engine components in their planes. Let that sink in. As many as 21 Delta engines may have been affected by this, and this is across the airline. So the company they've been using for certification of these parts is already under scrutiny but they are still allowed to certify parts. So, like, yep.
So you're telling me, like, on these big planes, they're like, oh no, this is the industrial rotor that's needed for the rivet to do the rivet thing, okay? And you're telling me that they're basically pulling parts out of like model airplane shit and slapping it on big planes.
Yeah,
cool.
pretty much.
All right. I think the Chipotle news was much more important, but that's fine.
I know. I had to bring you down a little bit. So South Korea, Hana Micron, which is not MU, is investing about $1 billion in Vietnam chip production. And I think we've seen it across the board. A lot more companies are curbing their investments into Taiwan and looking across other countries. Apple moved away from China to India, things like that. And we also get industrial numbers and production sale numbers out of South Korea later today. South Korea is one of the larger retail online shopping countries out there. Their people do spend a lot of money. Upgrades, we have AB, FVRR, HPQ, WMG, and Warby. Warby's got a price target of 20. It moved up pre-market, I think. Downgrades, interestingly, Airbnb, Getty, SPWR. Events. We have AI, Asan, Lumen, LUMN, and DNA. So DNA has their investor day, Asan has their investor day, and AI and Lumen are at the Deutsche Bank Leverage Finance Conference. One interesting thing I came across yesterday, how much money Apple gets quarterly from interest income. It's roughly $1 billion every quarter they get in interest income, followed by Alphabet, 900 million, Amazon, 660 million, Ford, 370 million. That's a shit ton of money just in interest income. And on the dashboard, let's see, dark pool wise, MA had a nice big dark pool. That's MasterCard. Everything else was pretty light. XLB was 12.5%. And I didn't find anything else interesting. So that's it.
Thank you, Sonny. Stonkington, I hope you got something to follow up this Chipotle news with that's just groundbreaking and powerful.
No, Hells, I will not toss your salad.
I certainly did not ask you to do that. That certainly did not happen.
Come on, man.
No,
Too early.
But you're complaining that I won't let you now? This is weird. This is beyond weird. The answer is no. No means no.
That's
No
what I
means
All right,
no.
folks, thanks for joining us. We got 11 minutes left.
Jesus, Stonkington.
Man. All right. Let's look at the smashings. We got stuff. All right. So Larry Williams would be short the S&P after yesterday, and he'd be red on his trade. This would have been the candle that would have set him up for a smash burger because it closed above the prior day's high. So Larry would have been looking to short below that low. So we look at yesterday's price action. These wicks would have got him in, and then would have been red, and now he'd be back to basically break even, and this would be the stop up there. So that would be what Larry would be looking at on the SPY. If we jump over to the IWM, we have a potential smash day to the upside because we closed below the prior day's low. We'll get an alert that pops in the room if we were to break yesterday's high on the IWM, although pre-market we're looking somewhere down there. And so that would be a heck of a move to get us back up there. Since we're looking at that, why don't we start on the Russell? There we go. All right. So let's see. This is what the bear flag that we looked at pre-market. That played out well. And then if we jump over to the 5-minute, let's see. The bear flag that we called live in the room yesterday, we gave the entry here. So not only did it have the big good sell, but we also caught this bear flag yesterday as well. So in terms of what's left, what's next? So we've got this 4-hour gap that was left above on the sell, So that could give us an upside target. If we start to reverse, I'd be looking to see what happens up there at that 1782.8. And then if we zoom out to the daily, they're going to be running out of stops to grab, or liquidity, whatever you want to call it. So we've got these equal lows over here that I'm going to keep on watch. If we continue to the downside, that's that 1745. But other than that, I mean, you can see on the daily, this is all going to be, if we were to close below here, this whole candle will be fair value gap territory. Then we had that little volume imbalance that now we had a candle close over, so we can probably get rid of that. And then, so yeah, basically going to be looking, it's either do we need to go stop this guy out, or do we have, we're going to push the upside, get through this fair value gap, and then this is going to be a key level that all the candle bodies were respecting. We got some bounces off of it. So I'm going to be looking at that 1788 above on the Rusty. If we jump over to the NASDAQ. All right, so I'm going to zoom in on this one a bit. So we had this rising trend line that we have lost. Below, we've got this line that we've been looking at for a couple of weeks now, which is the midpoint of this reversal area here. We're sitting on it. So I'm going to be watching to see if we can hold this 14,859.75. If we lose it, we've got downside targets. We've got a 4-hour gap. It's going to be this candle's low to that candle's high right there. So this would be a target that, what's that, 14,777-ish. And then we've got a small volume imbalance here. This candle's low to that body right there, or the low of that body. So we'll see if we need to come down and cover that up. If we were to push to the upside, then we'll be looking, we've got the new week opening gap, big one this week, as well as now a daily volume imbalance there on the NASDAQ, which is going to be that candle body down to there. It's all volume imbalance. So if we closed like that, we would cover it up. And then we've got the weekly gap above. So a couple things we'll be looking for here on the NASDAQ. Talk about Meta. Check out Meta. All right, so Meta was a daily inside bar, which is what had it on my list for today. We've got some fibs and trendline resistance above up there at 308.75. And then the big dark pool came in last week at 300.83. Psychological round number around 300. Maybe they want to defend that. Since we're drifting a little bit below here, I was going to be looking at this 305.35. Could maybe just adjust this down to we got maybe something like right here. See what we get down at this 303.90 there on Meta. And I'll still be watching 308.75 for upside. See if we can pop this. Hells mentioned we saw some bulls over there. There was some nice ER run-up flow on Meta as well. And then we've got Apple. So Apple had this falling wedge that we tried to break. We're kind of breaking, and then kind of caught this like megaphone type thing as well, which would technically be a bearish setup on Apple. So we'll see what we get. We've already had a little bit of an overshoot. Mostly going to be focusing on dark pools above here on Apple. We've got 172.65, and then 173.57 is the big one. I don't like that we keep stalling out in there. For downside, be looking at 171 flat. Nice psychological round number there on Apple. And that's
so Stomp, you know how I know the things that really, really get you going, right? You know this.
Do you? We'll say yes. I'll go along.
Okay. So trust me on this. Pull up Boeing and show us said fallingest wedge.
Oh yeah.
I thought he was going to take it back to the
I know,
salad tossing, and I was going to say well, I mean that kind of
so
set anyone off if you say, hey, you want to toss my salad.
I entered Boeing calls out the next week yesterday. I just don't know that it's possible to put in another red candle without a green candle on this. Whatever
that's amazing logic.
Well, no, but look, this is like Vegas, right? This is Vegas on the roulette table. You've been sitting there watching for an hour, and every
red. You're like, it's got to turn black, and then it's going to flip zero, red. Everybody's broke, and then it's black.
right? It's
Yeah.
like, so I'm thinking based on this type of logic, we'll see if it plays out or not. Murder plane. What the fuck you do with that?
So
What do you
who's
do with
putting
that?
fake engine parts in airplanes?
Well, we don't know that it's a Boeing.
It's probably Mattel.
You see,
Boy,
same
Yeah.
difference at this point. But yeah,
I mean, yeah, I don't. I mean,
hey man,
maybe
we're
following
betting
with it,
black
but
on this one, baby. It's like Red's been running for like 3 straight fucking hours on the table. You know, it's just red.
You're
So
up
here's
to
a BA,
next
right?
week.
When you mention it, BA put the news out.
On what?
They're going to ramp up the 737 monthly production to a record level by 2025.
Ooh, buddy. Go give me that 300 to see. Somebody was in there watching the same roulette table, is all I got to say.
That might be your zero. that might be your zero.
Oh, man. All right. We got about 3-4 minutes left until open. Let's have fun, guys. That's what it's like. We're going to make money and have fun. So let's get after it. We'll see you guys soon.
All right.